The Complete Book of Farmyard Tales.
Part 2. Beep.
Pig gets lost.
Beep. This is Apple Tree Farm. This is Mrs. Boot the farmer. She has 2 children called Poppy and Sam and a dog called Rusty. Mrs. Boot has 6 pigs. There is a mother pig and 5 baby pigs. The smallest pig is called Curly. They live in a pen. Beep. Mrs. Boot feeds the pigs every morning. She takes them 2 big buckets of food. But where is Curly? He is not in the pen. She calls Poppy and Sam. Curly's gone, she says. I need your help to find him. Beep. Where are you, Curly? Poppy and Sam call to Curly. Let's look in the hen run, says Mrs. Boot. But Curly is not there. There he is, in the barn. He's in the barn, says Sam. I can just see his tail. They all run into the barn to catch Curly. Beep. That's not Curly. It's only a piece of rope, says Mrs. Boot. Not Curly's tail. Where can he be, says Poppy. Maybe he's eating the cow's food. But Curly is not with the cows. Don't worry, says Mrs. Boot. We'll soon find him. Beep. Perhaps he's in the garden. They look for Curly in the garden, but he is not there. We'll never find him, says Sam. Why is Rusty barking? Rusty is standing by a ditch. He barks and barks. He's trying to tell us something, says Poppy. Beep. Rusty has found Curly. They all look in the ditch. Curly has slipped down into the mud and can't climb out. We'll have to lift him out. All get into the ditch, says Mrs. Boot. I'm coming too, says Poppy. And me, says Sam. Beep. Beep. Curly is very muddy. Mrs. Boot picks Curly up, but he struggles. Then he slips back into the mud with a splash. Now everyone is very muddy. Sam tries to catch Curly, but he falls into the mud. Mrs. Boot grabs Curly and climbs out of the ditch. Beep. They all climb out of the ditch. We all need a good bath, says Mrs. Boot. Rusty found Curly. Clever dog, says Sam. The hungry donkey. Beep. This is Apple Tree Farm. Mrs. Boot the farmer. She has 2 children called Poppy and Sam and a dog called Rusty. There is a donkey on the farm. The donkey is called Ears. She lives in a field with lots of grass, but she is always hungry. Beep. Ears the donkey is going out. Poppy and Sam catch Ears and take her to the farmyard. Today is the day of the show. Ears has a little cart. They brush her coat, comb her tail, and clean her feet. Mrs. Boot puts her into her little cart. Beep. Off they go to the show. Poppy and Sam climb up into the cart. They all go down the lane to the showground. You stay here, Ears. At the showground, Mrs. Boot ties Ears to a fence. Stay here. We'll be back soon, she says. Beep. Ears gets free. Ears is hungry and bored with nothing to do. She pulls and pulls on the rope until she is free. Ears looks for food. Ears trots across the field to the show ring. She sees a bunch of flowers and some fruit. Beep. That looks good to eat. She takes a big bite, but the flowers do not taste very nice. A lady screams and Ears is frightened. Ears runs away. Mrs. Boot, Poppy, and Sam and the lady run after her and catch her. Beep. Naughty donkey, says Sam. I'm sorry, Mrs. Boot says to the lady. Would you like to take Ears to the best donkey competition? Ears is very good now. The lady is called Mrs. Rose. She climbs into the cart. Come on, she says, and shakes the reins. Beep. Ears pulls the cart into the show ring. She trots in front of the judges. She stops and goes when Mrs. Rose tells her. Ears wins a prize. Well done, says the judge, giving her a rosette. He gives Mrs. Rose a prize, too. It is a hat. Beep. It is time to go home. Mrs. Rose waves goodbye. That was such fun, she says. Ears trots home. She has a new hat, too. Scarecrow's secret. Beep. This is Apple Tree Farm. This is Mrs. Boot, the farmer. She has 2 children, called Poppy and Sam, and a dog called Rusty. Mr. Boot is working in the barn. What are you doing, Dad? asked Sam. I'm tying lots of straw on these poles, said Mr. Boot. Beep. What is that? You'll soon see, says Mr. Boot. Go and get my old coat from the shed, please. Bring my old hat, too. It's going to be a scarecrow. Poppy and Sam come back with the coat and hat. Then they help Mr. Boot put them on the scarecrow. Beep. He's just like a nice old man. I've got some old gloves for him, says Sam. Let's call him Mr. Straw, says Poppy. He's finished now. Help me carry him, please, Poppy, says Mr. Boot. You bring the spade, Sam. Beep. They all go to the cornfield. Mr. Boot digs a hole in the field. Then he pushes in the pole so that Mr. Straw stands up. He does look real. I'm sure Mr. Straw will scare off all the birds, says Sam, especially the crows, says Poppy. Beep. Mr. Straw is doing a good job. Every day, Mr. Boot, Poppy, and Sam look at Mr. Straw. There are no birds in the cornfield. There's Farmer Dre's scarecrow. He's no good at all, says Sam. The birds are eating all the corn and standing on the scarecrow. Beep. Why is Mr. Straw so good? Sometimes he looks as if he's moving, says Poppy. His coat goes up and down. It's very odd. Let's go and look. Let's creep up very quietly, says Sam. And they tiptoe across the cornfield to look at Mr. Straw. Beep. There's something inside his coat. It's moving, says Poppy, and it's making a funny noise. What is it? Says Sam. It's our cat and her kittens. Carefully they open the coat. There is Whiskers, the cat, and 2 baby kittens hiding in the straw. Beep. So that's the scarecrow's secret. Whispers is helping Mr. Straw to frighten off the birds, says Poppy. Clever Mr. Straw, says Sam.